Okay. I am really excited because this last mini series or multi part series that I did, first of all, the feedback I got from all of you was just, I could cry thinking about it. It was so incredible. And I think that it inspired a lot of things. And as I've, even before doing this multi part series, I had really felt like a disconnect in my social media for a couple of reasons. And I think that it's because I wasn't showing up in my most genuine form. Of course, there's aspects of my business, of my life I don't share, but I think there was so much of what I had been doing in past episodes that felt so business-like, and it didn't feel as conversational as I wanted it to feel. Same thing with my social media. And I think there is a part of me that really wants this community or every experience that you guys have with me to just feel like you're talking to a friend. Not that you're being coached to, that you're being marketed to, any aspect of it. And so I think that was another piece why I felt like, okay, there's something that's off. And so that's all to say that I think with the Eden Edit, what I would really like to experiment with going forward is just showing up in a way that feels more genuine in the conversations while I am still coaching you on branding and marketing and just business in general. The whole premises of Eden and Empire is really to align you with building something that is of significance, but not sacrificing what's sacred to you, and really shifting you all away and growing in my mindset as well, but shifting away from what the world tells us that we need to do and really focusing on what God is aligning within us as business owners. So another thing that I want to say is I almost feel like these episodes are they'll kind of feel like series, mostly because in my past podcast episodes, I would change, I would do my hair and makeup differently. But it all wasn't genuine because I was shooting it all on the same day for the most part. And so when I do a series of episodes, you'll see me showing up exactly the same. So I will look the same in each episode. I know sometimes that goes against like marketing and branding, but I just know from my own capacity, I hate trying to figure out something different to wear, a different way to wear my short hair, which there's like not very many ways, or I'm not very creative. And I just want to make the episodes. I don't need them to look a certain way. So I'm showing up for you in what feels like allows me to be the most consistent and allows me to just be who I need to be in order to show up for you all. So what that looks like too sometimes is me gathering my thoughts and writing them all down, before I do an episode. And so sometimes I'll look away and look at my notes, and just putting out the episodes and batching them as much as I can. So yeah, if you guys have been following along with the series, you know that in the last episode that I did, I really shared a lot of the deep healing work that God called me to do. And can I tell you something that kind of sounds crazy? So even in the midst of all of this, I hit a milestone that I had been working towards for years. And instead of celebrating, I cried. And it felt very empty. Like I had ended up climbing this mountain to only realize that this mountain wasn't supposed to be a climb at all. And so this is something that I've kind of wrestled with during my entire journey as an entrepreneur, is really feeling like this need to pause. So again, if you watched my last episode, you'll know that I did that multi-part series and I did a lot of healing work, and I shared some of that with all of this. And then God called me to what I believe feels in the most, I don't like using the word authentic, but the most authentic way to kind of move towards building Eden and Empire. And I want to talk about something that I feel like a lot of high achievers end up struggling with. And I feel like they struggle with it silently because up until, working with other women in the Goldman Sachs program, I didn't realize that most people were struggling with these things. And it's not really what you think it all is. And so I think it's kind of this mentality of what happens when you have everything that you thought that you wanted, but you have this void that you expected it to fill and it doesn't. And so what that means is, like, I'll give myself as an example. So for years, I've always strived to be perfect at whatever it is that I'm doing. So when I would work at restaurants, because I was a server for, several restaurants, anytime I would work at a restaurant, I would memorize the menu because I wanted to be perfect at it right away. So like while I was in training, I would memorize all of it because I wanted to excel faster and just make more money. And then when I went and worked at PayPal, we had this period of time where you would work. So I was in compliance investigation. So I dealt with like terrorist financing, financial fraud, child crimes, drug related stuff. I was basically like an online cop. And you had to go through obviously a training process through all of that. And I always tried to test out of it quicker, which I did, so that I could work more hours or just be better, like the best at everything. And what I realized is that every time I would do this, what I thought would end up happening, or that goal that I thought was going to be, I hit it, it's amazing, it's all of these things, it never was that. And so I tried to hit these goals because I wanted it to fill that void of, if you watched my last episode, probably for people to see my worth. Like I was worthy of, being in that position, or, I landed this job. I wanted it to mean something more than probably what it should have for me. And so even a little bit ago when I hit that milestone that I thought was going to be amazing, like I created an empire and I had success and it was going amazing, but I hit that goal and immediately it didn't fill that void that I thought that it should fill. And within 5 minutes of hitting that goal, I was already on to the next one. Like I didn't allow myself to really fully fill what it should feel like in that moment and really go back to thinking, well, you just did something that's so worth celebrating. Why can't we focus on that? And I think there's a part of it that's part of being an entrepreneur. Like I think we all have that, but I think in my mind, I thought, oh, that's what ambition looks like, right? You're really driven, you're really goal oriented. Let's just move on to the next thing. But as I've gone along in this journey of healing, I know that all of this wasn't just given to me because of God gave it to me, right? So I needed to honor that and really look into what it is that God wanted me to really be focusing on. Was it the numbers? Was it the amount of people that were in my community just to kind of call it a success? Like what was it that was really driving it? It really wasn't that typical necessarily. It wasn't typically what entrepreneurs experience, I feel like. I think on some level, just as humans, we all have this desire to be wanted, to be worthy, to be all of these things. And then that typical entrepreneurial drive, it wasn't necessarily just ambition. It was more of, okay, I think I'm probably more desperate to just prove I'm worthy of something than the typical drive. And every achievement was this other way of showing that, yes, maybe she does have it figured out, maybe she's really good at something, or that I'm worth choosing. And I talked about that in my last episode about filling that void. But I think that the problem with that, and I noticed this even before I had identified that rejection wound, is that I was somebody that was constantly trying to strive for something, but what did it mean? So as I was selected to do as a panelist on the Goldman Sachs 1 million Black women in business, and they have their next set of cohorts coming up. And so I was selected to be one of the interviewers in it. And one of the cohort potential selectees, I don't know what to call them, I had asked a question, and I asked her, what does success look like for you 2 to 3 years down the line? And she responded. It was a great response. It was kind of a standard response. And I felt this yearning to kind of want to go a little bit deeper and ask her, okay, but outside of the metrics, outside of the numbers, what would that mean to you? And when you actually go past just the surface level question, what ended up happening is that what she had revealed was more about her worth, right? She had just come out of a divorce. She had a young daughter that she wanted to show that in spite of everything, you can still be successful. You can be a woman and provide for yourself. You can do all of these other things. And it wasn't tied to the revenue. It was tied to this feeling of, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't like this feeling like I had. It might be, I'm not sure. But what I saw is in all of it, we have this deeper need that goes beyond the metrics and the dollar amounts because they all mean something to us. But a lot of times what the world ends up telling us is that you need to hit 7 figures because that's what determines it's a successful business, not what God fills us with, right? Like, go for the impact, go to change lives, go minister, go go help carry on the kingdom. Just all of these things that the scripture tells us that God fills us with. And what I feel like instinctively in our hearts, we know that we're missing. And for myself, I thought that all of these external achievements that I thought that I needed to go out and get were indicative of my worth. And it really wasn't that. It never was that. And I had this deeper need for wanting my boys to see me and see that, okay, their father is a entrepreneur and your mom can have just as much as what he has and she can take care of herself. And that probably stems a little bit from the validation or not fully trusting men or all of these other things. But there's also this part that feels like I know that I'm capable and I want to show my boys that I'm capable. And I don't feel like that part of it is a bad thing. But I also wanted to recognize that when I hit these goals, was it because they were tied to a dollar amount or a revenue or a worldly metric? Or were they really tied to the things that drove me as a person? And I think that when I started to see myself just checking off another goal and moving on to the next, it showed me that there was probably a deeper meaning behind the goals that I was setting. And I wasn't setting them from a place that came from my heart. It was probably from a place that the world was telling me that I needed to go towards. And then, as I looked at like my life and all of these things that I was doing, I was like, is this really how you want to show up? Not only for yourself, but for your boys, for the women that you're coaching. And I think the problem with external achievements is that they're never really healing what is internally driving you. And a lot of times we have these wounds that we never even knew needed to be addressed in order for us to show up in a more beneficial way for our audience, for our family, for our friends, people who just come in contact with us. And it essentially becomes like this moving goalpost that you're never able to achieve. And I realized, why did I need to have a 7-figure business? That's still a goal of mine, but why do I need to have that? It was just never enough. And it ended up being like the money that I was making was more, I can't even tell you guys. When I first stepped into this space of branding and marketing, I remember, I was a stay-at-home mom with my boys. I don't even know if I consider it a stay-at-home mom. I was working from home with my boys. They were my primary focus though. And I remember thinking, if I just make $1,000 a month, I will be so happy. I will be so happy. And within the first few months, God times it by 10. And the only thing that ended up happening is, yes, I appreciated it. But the only thing that fully ended up happening is that I just set another goal. And then I'd hit that goal. Then I'd set another goal. And then I'd hit it. And then what? I thought that okay, I hit that 5-figure mark. Now I need to get featured in a magazine. I was featured in at least 3 different art. See, and I don't even keep track. That's the thing, is I was featured in at least, I want to say 4 different magazine articles within my first year of going into business in this space. And then I felt like, okay, wonderful. Now I need to speak on TV. I had a TV interview. What now? I need to speak on stage. I have spoken on so many stages. And then I thought, okay, well, that's fine. Now I just need to speak on bigger stages. I speak on bigger stages. Then what? I was just constantly moving this goalpost. And the achievement that's the piece that in and of itself wasn't actually what was satisfying me on a deeper need. And so I don't know. I don't know. I know there's a healthy way around it, of course. And so what I did is started really looking internally on the things that I needed. And I don't know. I mean, I think the comparison trap on social media ends up becoming this form of, I don't know, honestly, like weird torture. I struggle with social media because I know I need to show up in some capacity so I can connect with my people and find them and help resonate with those. But what ended up happening is during this time is you see coaches and they're like 7-figure launch. You can sell out all of your courses. You can do this, you can do that. And internally I knew that wasn't sustainable for most people. It's not realistic. It's not all of these things. Can it happen? Yes. But do I know that so much more goes into it than just what's portrayed on social media? Absolutely. You see these beautiful, and I fall into this trap, and this is probably just because this is the direction I want to go with my life, is like I see these women who are on social media and they have this beautiful homestead, right? They're women who are like very into sourdough bread making and they're the ultimate homemaker and they look beautiful and they are able to cook every single meal from scratch and never buy anything from the store, and they have farms, and like that's what I want so much right now. But I fall into this comparison game and it's really actually harmful for me sometimes, of like everything's toxic and I need to make everything for my boys from scratch. And like, so then I have 2 boys, right? One is almost 3 and the other 6, and they require a lot of attention from me. And I run a business and I'm a wife and I spend time with my family, and my son is home for the summer, and it's not realistic for me to make every single thing from scratch. But social media has this way of pulling me in, and I think it does with everybody. But what I felt like is even outside of the business, right? Just like as a mom and a wife, like this woman is successful, right? She has it all figured out. She can manage the home, she can manage the food, and it's, she lives in a beautiful home and it's all this perfect harmony, when in reality, I know that's not the case. She may have beautiful pieces of her life that are great, but that doesn't equate to success. And for her, it might be, absolutely, but that's not my definition of success. Where am I writing my definition of success from? Where is it coming from? Is it based on other people's ideas and their values and their standards, or their the things that they wanted in life, or the things they achieved? Or is it really based on what I want for my life and my family and what's actually realistic for me? And so I think that, there's that comparison, that imposter complex that we all tend to get is, the more successful that we become externally, the more sometimes we can kind of feel like a fraud. At least I knew for me, like it just didn't feel like, was I actually successful in what I determined, getting on TV and doing all of these things? Like to some degree, yes, because those were all things that I wanted. But I feel like the reason why it didn't feel like what I wanted it to feel like is because that's somebody else's definition of success. It wasn't entirely my own. And it also played into this cycle of exhaustion that I found myself in, trying to keep up with everything that it required to maintain this level of go, 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 and you always have to be on and you can't sit still and you have to go on to the bigger, better thing, and rest just ultimately for me felt like it was dangerous, because I'm the type of person where it seems like when I'm in motion, I have to stay in motion. And then when I stop, I just stop. And so for me, rest felt like I couldn't even sit down because I knew that the momentum that I had gained would potentially just fall. And in some ways it did, and that was okay. That's the thing, is that it's okay for me to fully rest, not just put a blanket over it, and then find ways to heal what I needed to heal and then incorporate rest into my everyday so that it didn't feel like it was all or nothing. And the reason why it was probably all or nothing is because I was go, go, go. And it's like when you binge eat, right? Or you're on like a crash diet. You can do it for only so long, but then what ends up happening is that everything falls down and it's not sustainable. Like, you need to incorporate the healthy things into your lifestyle in a slow way. And so for me, rest needed to be an integral part of my life instead of it always having to come at the detriment of burnout, right? Like, I only rested because I was so exhausted. I was so burnt out. And that's not what I know God wants for our business. Like, in everything for me, I know that's not what He pictures when He calls you to run a business. Because ultimately, I feel like what ends up happening is you get to this level and it steals your joy. You're not running from a place of happiness because you're trying to keep up. You're not giving your full self to your family, to the things that you love, your hobbies, the things that you enjoy outside of being a business owner, a mom, a wife. It just becomes this thief, essentially. And I think the thing that hurts me most is, and I feel like I'm recognizing this now, but last year, my beautiful family said, we're going to come and watch the boys for the first time for us, right? For the first time in the entire time we've been parents, they said, we're going to come watch the boys. I just want you to have a couples trip. And I said, okay. And I remember the entire time, first of all, I was sick. Like, I had like a sinus infection or something. So there's that piece of it. I give myself grace on that end. But I always get sick on vacations. And this is probably something I'm unpacking while I'm doing this podcast too, is I get sick on vacations all the time because I don't allow myself to rest fully, or it's the lack of control, and maybe I stress out. And so I get myself sick. I don't know. But anyway, so I'm on this vacation with my husband. It's incredible. But all the while, and I remember having this conversation with him, and I know he hated the answer, but I asked him, I was like, what do you enjoy? Like, what do you really like doing? Because I could feel myself not fully being present or feeling fully happy in that moment, in that time, when it's like, that's what I dreamt of doing. And, just having a couples trip. And I felt like what was happening is that I couldn't enjoy my successes or in even these small moments of just being a human, and celebrating, because they were always, I don't know, they were always being taken over by this feeling of what's next, or feeling like I needed to be doing something all of the time and I couldn't just be content. Like, I lost sight of the things that I loved doing. Because when he asked me that question, I said, I really don't know. I don't know what I find enjoyment in anymore except work and you guys. The boys and my husband were the only things that felt like, obviously in my family, but I didn't know what I enjoyed doing. I didn't know what my hobbies were outside of being a mom and being a business owner. And I feel like that I was so conditioned to stay busy and stay productive and stay distracted that I didn't even know what I enjoyed doing anymore. And I don't know if any of this sounds familiar to any of you, but I think on a deeper level, we don't realize what ends up happening when we are just maintaining this moving goalpost without really figuring out, why am I doing what I'm doing? When you're building something, why are you sacrificing what, as you should sometimes, right? Like, your business sometimes does deserve 100% of your attention, and your family does get less time with you. As your family gets less time with you, as your business gets less time with you, your family gets more time with you. It's not a balance. People always ask me that, and I get asked that a lot on podcasts, like, how do you balance it all? And the number one thing I say is I don't believe in balance. I think that it's a unicorn that does not exist. And I think that it's all about prioritizing. So I think that ultimately, as you're building something and you're figuring out who you are within your business, this is important to figure out. When you can identify who you are as a business owner, it can help you really connect with your people, right? So if we're applying this to business, but ultimately, what's the point of doing what we're doing if it doesn't bring us joy? And we're sacrificing things without meaning, essentially. If we're just sacrificing things at the mercy of the dollar, what is that going to bring us? Because when we hit that dollar amount and we have those bills coming in, because we've, a lot of times as we grow in our business, we start to elevate our lifestyle. And so the income level, you hit a level and then you need to make more, and then you need to make more and more, but at what cost, right? Like, what are we doing all of this for? And so I don't know. I think a lot of times we forget that. And I know for me, it took a little bit for me to even identify that's what was happening when I would hit goals. But I would ask you to pause, like maybe you've hit an income goal and you do it and it feels very empty, or you've built a following, but you don't really feel seen in all of this, or you feel like you've created this business that you thought that you wanted, but you're kind of wondering, like, is this all that it is? Is this all meant to be just burnout and exhaustion and questioning myself and all the things I feel like come with being a business owner? But I feel like for me, I had this breakthrough moment where God was like, Vanessa, you have to kind of look at what you're doing with your business. Like, if you never hit another business goal, if you never did anything else with your business, would you still believe that I love you? And for me, it's like, I feel like what he is trying to get out of me is like, do you still believe that you have value outside of this business? And I don't know in a lot of ways that I can answer that question fully as a yes, because I think that, well, yes, I do believe that he loves me and that I have worth, but I think it's that worth part. Do I still have worth outside of this? And I'm still working towards that, right? It's not perfect. It's not 100%. Do I believe that I have value and I have worth? Absolutely. But to the degree that I feel like it should be, not always. But I think that that's when I realized that there's a deeper healing on so many levels that was preparing me for Eden and Empire. And just as a business owner in general, that we need to build businesses. And that's why I started Eden and Empire, because we shouldn't have to be sacrificing all these things that are sacred to us while we're building something of significance, because I believe all of us are. So I don't know. I wanted to share that because I think a lot of times we get stuck in this mentality of the pressure to scale, the pressure to have achievements, and maybe you're listening to this and I hope that it's helpful for you and you're able to recognize some of these things. But I'm here and you can always reach out, and I always appreciate when you guys do. So until the next episode.